Hi, this is Ed Rudiger, and happy almost 4th of July. Now, I'm going to share with you an essay I wrote. It was published in a local newspaper, the Clarion News, this morning. And I want to share it with you dealing with a person who often gets lost in the shuffle when we think about the 4th of July. The title of the essay is Remembering John Adams. Soon we'll be celebrating the 4th of July, our National Independence Day. And I think I'm safe in saying that we'll do it with a lot of flags waving and fireworks exploding and hamburgers grilling. And I haven't even mentioned all the holiday shopping. But of course, none of this is new and exciting. This is what we tend to do every year. And while we celebrate, I'm sure we're going to hear the same names mentioned we hear every year. For example, George Washington is always a big deal on the 4th, as well he should. I mean, he's the father of our country, for crying out loud. And we'll hear about Thomas Jefferson, who wrote these immortal words. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And somewhere in the middle of all the flags and the fireworks and the hamburgers, we'll hear about the guy who literally put his John Hancock near the bottom of the document that was signed by Congress on July 4th, 1776. Now, I think these are the players we can expect to hear mentioned on the 4th, because we hear them mentioned every year. Unfortunately, though, there's a name that we may not hear, and that name is John Adams. And I'll tell you, I think that's a real shame. You see, not only was Adams a member of the five-man committee that wrote the Declaration, along with Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, he was actually the first person who predicted that in the future we'd be celebrating the birth of our nation in early July. You see, in a letter he wrote to his wife, Abigail, John Adams said that the Independence Day should be celebrated with pomp and parade, with shows, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfire, and illuminations from one end of the continent to the other, from this time forward and forevermore. And of course, Adams was also the first vice president of the United States and the second president, having been elected after George Washington decided not to run in 1796. Now, those were just a few of the things John Adams did, and if that was all he accomplished, in my opinion, that's enough to make him memorable somewhere during our celebration. But as important as all he did was for the country he helped to birth, I believe his greatest gift to us as Americans was actually something he chose not to do. Remember, I wrote that he was the second president of the United States? Well, in 1800, he ran for re-election against his former friend and now political rival, Thomas Jefferson. And I'll tell you, it was a nasty campaign. In fact, it was one of the nastiest in the history of presidential campaigns, with both sides getting really personal in their attacks. I'll tell you, they even misrepresented what their opponent believed, and they called one another names. I mean, fortunately, we've risen above all that foolishness, right? Now, that was the campaign of 1800. And after the electoral votes were counted, John Adams lost to the guy who called him a monarchist, the equivalent of being called a Nazi or a communist nowadays. And I'll tell you, it was right here that John Adams gave this nation, his nation, the most incredible gift possible. He decided not to disregard the results and to stay in office, something he could have certainly done, given the fact that he was not only the commander-in-chief, but his political party controlled both houses of Congress and the Supreme Court. And since George Washington had won both his re-elections unopposed, there was no precedent for what a president was supposed to do if he should lose. You see, John Adams could have simply refused to leave the White House, forcing President-elect Jefferson to remove him, something that would have demanded force. But of course, that's not what President Adams did. Instead, on March 4th, 1801, he simply left the Capitol. peacefully turning power over to his rival and establishing a precedent that other presidents have chosen to follow. And in my opinion, this saved America, allowing power to move between rivals without violence. I mean, it would have been impossible for the United States to survive if every time a president failed either to be renominated by his party or to lose the general election, something that's happened 14 times in our history, if every time that occurred, the country was thrown into civil war. I'll tell you, that hasn't happened. And for that, we can thank the voluntary sacrifice of John Adams. But of course, we don't know what motivated President Adams to take such a step, to step aside peacefully. He never offered a rationale or a reason. But since he was a Christian who valued the Bible as a guide for both faith and practice, I'd like to think that his decision was grounded, at least in part, on these words of Jesus Christ. You know that those foreigners who call themselves kings like to order their people around, and their great leaders have full power over the people they rule. But don't act like them. If you want to be great, you must be the servant of all the others. And if you want to be first, you must be everybody's slave. The Son of Man did not come to be a slave master, but a slave who will give his life to rescue many. This was the kind of perspective Jesus commanded his disciples to have. And since in 1813, he wrote this in a letter, I have examined all, as well as my narrow sphere, my strengthened means, and my busy life would allow me. And the result is the Bible is the best book in the world. I believe John Adams knew this. But I'll tell you, regardless of his motivation, President Adams offered us a wonderful gift in 1801, one that allowed us to develop as a nation and as a people. Instead of holding on to power with bloody fingernails, he simply let go, trusting in the providence of God and confident that who we are as a country is so much more than a person or a party or an ideology. And for me, well, this is why we should remember John Adams on July 4th. Amen. Well, thank you for listening. I hope you found the essay meaningful. And let me tell you, I hope, and I'm talking to those who are listening who are United States citizens or residents of the United States, I want to wish you the best 4th of July possible. Until I talk with you again, remember, you are a child of God, and God loves you very much. Goodbye for now.